welcome to a brand new show of India Reboot, the show on which we debate, ideate, discuss, and also try and understand that what could really kick-start the growth momentum for India now that the second wave seems to be coming down. So discuss that and to ideate that, it gives me extraordinary pleasure to bring on board Ronojoy Dutta, CEO with IndiGo. Mr. Dutta, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Hope all is well and things are safe at your end.
Good morning, Nikunj. Thank you for calling me to the show.
Well, Mr. Dutta, it's been tough, rough and hard for all of us on the business front and also on the personal front. My question to you is that when we spoke to you about 8 months ago, we were discussing the impact of the first wave. Today, let's analyze the impact of the second wave and how different it is for your company and for your sector from the first wave.
The first wave was relatively shallow, as you know, but there was hesitancy in the flying public. So even when COVID numbers started going down, there was a lag. Customers were still not sure, is it safe to fly? Do I really need to fly? What we see in the second wave, which is very sharp, as you know, is that there's no hesitancy. So as soon as the second wave started coming down, customers were eager to fly and the numbers started going up. So the lag factor totally disappeared in the second wave, I would say.
So in terms of the air traffic, how much of the air traffic has normalized to March levels? And I'm talking about March 2021. I'm not going to 2020 at all because that would be a hard comparison. I'm trying to compare from the beginning of the first wave, from the beginning of the second wave to now, how much normalization has happened?
Okay, so I won't give you IndiGo numbers because we are coming up on our earnings soon. I'll give you the industry numbers. So really our peak was in February. February was a very good month. We were all feeling very bullish. And then in March, we started having problems. And May was the worst month. If you look at the numbers, between the peak of February to the trough of May, we went down to about 25%. But since then, we've recovered back to about 60-70%. So while the decline was very sharp, the recovery also seems to be sharp.
If one looks at data which is coming from developed markets, the data is indicating that almost 85% of the air travel as we speak has normalized to pre-COVID levels. And by next calendar year, which is calendar year 2022, airline industry in developed markets would be back to pre-COVID levels. Do you see the same factor could be at play in India also?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm very bullish about how quickly the recovery is happening, which is why I talked about the lag factor not being there. Right now, we are very tied closely to the COVID numbers. And as COVID declines, we see our traffic coming up fast. So yeah, by 22, I'm pretty sure we'll be back to pre-COVID levels. International is a bit of a question mark because we do need to normalize and standardize all the procedures for going from one country to another. So that's going to see a lag. But domestic, I have no doubt that we are back to pre-COVID levels relatively quickly.
And like last time, no airline has come forward and talked about the layoffs or salary cuts. How should one read into it? Does that mean that airlines have become very efficient or there is no scope to cut cost?
If there's one thing I've learned from various crises I've lived through, from 9/11 to a couple of airline bankruptcies, it is that in the crisis, the two things are absolutely critical. The first is communicate with shareholders, with your customers, with your employees. The second one really is hold your employees together. So if we lose our employees, there's very little hope of coming out of the recovery quickly. Now, our employees are quite mature. We communicate as transparently as we can with them. And we did have to do pay cuts and layoff. But throughout the process, we were communicating what our plans are. So they've held together very well. We have absolutely no plans for further layoffs or pay cuts. It's not necessary at all. So we value our employee relationships very much. It's one of our pillars of strength. And we do have a leave without pay program right now, which expires next month. I'm anxious to get out of all this and get back to a normal pay structure as quickly as we can.
So what you're confirming to me is that whatever salary cuts or leave without pay emergency measures which IndiGo had in a sense was forced to adopt, they all would be normalized very soon.
Very quickly, very quickly. Like I said, leave without pay drops out next month, and after that, we'll have to work slowly on the pay front. Look, I mean, when we say, what is management's job? It is to take care of customers, it is to take care of shareholders, it is to take care of employees. And we take all of those three responsibilities very seriously. So in this COVID process, we were sincerely looking out for the welfare of our employees. When I'll point to our vaccination program, for example. Along with that, we created hospital beds in both Delhi and Bangalore. We created ambulance service at the height of the COVID crisis. So we were very careful to make sure that the employees recognize how much we care and not sort of cherish that relationship.
I also want to understand from you, Mr. Dutta, given that right now airlines are not flying at their peak capacity, do you see an element of price war happening where some airlines may decide to go for spot sales and keep pricing lower on trunk routes in order to get their minimum number going so that they hit their break even?
I very much believe in economics being a merciless driver of all decisions. So yes, we are all flying less than capacity. But the fact is, none of us can afford to lose cash. So we are pricing in such a way and putting in capacity in such a way so that it's always cash generative. And I don't see anyone sort of not following that line, because if you did, you'd be sort of going into a self-destructive mode. So no, I don't see any destructive price wars happening. I think the government should open up the capacity. We are now, as you know, at 65% capacity. We desperately need to add capacity. I think it's good for the industry, of course. Even more, it's good for the country to have higher capacity. And therefore, I don't see anything destructive going on here. I think the discipline of economics is very much there.
You have more than 50% market share. You have the strongest balance sheet. Whatever you will decide will be followed by others.
And
my question is that what are you planning to decide on pricing and yields?
Look, so what is our goal here? Our goal here is to get back to full capacity utilization as quickly as possible. So when we went into this crisis, we asked ourselves, what is the path back to recovery? And by recovery, I mean profitability. What is the path back to profitability? And it was very clear that it was not a revenue path, it was a cost path. We had to reduce our cost in such a way so that we could have a shot at getting to profitability, because after that, revenue would come. Which says we are not focusing so much on let's squeeze the maximum yields, let's push load factors up. No, we are very much sort of obsessed with adding more capacity, because adding more capacity, as you know, reduces our unit costs. It distributes our fixed costs better. So our path to profitability is through reduced cost, which means more capacity. Yields, load factors, those will follow.
We all are hoping and praying and keeping our fingers crossed that we don't see a strong third wave. But in case, God forbid, we see a third wave, what is your preparedness?
So our view of the third wave is it's inevitable. But given the rate at which vaccination is progressing, we also think it'll be relatively flat. So we are basing our plans around that. To the extent that there is an impact of a more shallow third wave, we are, of course, keeping our balance sheet very strong. So the crisis is mostly on the cash front. So a healthy balance sheet is our biggest defense against that. So our balance sheet now has $1 billion in it. So we are fairly well prepared, we believe, for the third wave. And then again, it's vaccination. And just talking about our own employees, we vaccinated over 91% of them. And I'm hoping that all private enterprise is pushing for a vaccination of their employees so that the country is well prepared for the third wave.
Fair point. The jury is not out as to what would be the permanent trend in business travel. That's the mainstay for any airline, especially the airlines which operate on trunk routes, Delhi, Bombay, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, Bombay. What is your sense?
Business travel is, of course, important. So pre-COVID, business travel was 20% of our revenues. Fortunately, we are a low-cost carrier, and we are not as heavily dependent on business travel as many of the full-service carriers. So business travel used to be 20% of our revenue. In the worst scenario, it dropped to about 8%. Right now, it's about 10, 11%. So we don't think it'll ever recover to the 20%, but we do see a slow recovery to around 13, 14%. And that's fine with us, because overall, we think yields will slowly migrate up. As you know, India has the lowest yields in the world. So there's no room for them to go any lower. At the same time, large number of new flyers are coming into the market. Only 7% of Indians have ever flown. So there's this other 93%, which is gradually migrating towards airline travel. And that will create pressure upwards on yield. So business traffic, we'd love to have it back. But we are not sort of panicking about it in any way, because we are not that kind of full service carrier, highly dependent on business travel.
As we look into the future, and I'm just talking about a trend here because you have understanding of how many seats have been booked and how the festival season and the holiday season would move. Slightly forward looking, if I might take the liberty of asking you, if you have to give us a sense on where holiday and travel, holiday booking could move for airline sector and for IndiGo, let's say in October, September and closer to Diwali, what is your initial sense? Are you getting response back? Are people rushing in to already block their tickets for the Diwali, Dussehra holiday?
Excellent question. The short answer is it's too early to tell. But a slightly longish answer is, let's compare it to last year. Last year, Diwali was okay. It wasn't great. And in fact, the traffic improved stronger after Diwali. So as I said, February was the strongest month. So in all of this, what we're seeing is seasonality is less of a factor. It is being overwhelmed by the COVID numbers. So February is typically not one of the strongest months, but last February was very good because COVID was so low. We see the same thing here. We watch the COVID numbers very carefully, and we think, well, although every year we pay attention to the seasonal factors, this year probably it's going to be less of an issue. I'm hoping Diwali will be strong, but we'll have to wait and see. It's too early to really know.
A business which we don't talk about is the cargo business. Higher margin, good growth business, the essential, the necessity to commute goods, I think is pretty much evident in this COVID time. What is happening to that end of the business for IndiGo?
So some broad numbers first. One of the areas which is a challenge and therefore also an opportunity is that Indian airlines don't carry enough of the passengers, don't carry enough of the cargo. Foreign airlines carry 65% of India's international traffic. Foreign carriers carry 90% of India's international cargo. Now, those are really huge numbers and need to be brought down. And it'll only happen because Indian players step up to the plate, if you will. So yes, we are very focused both on the passenger and the cargo side internationally. As you know, we've signed a lease for 4 freighter aircraft. We're very excited about that. They come next year. And in general, cargo clearly is a major opportunity. And it's particularly an opportunity for IndiGo, because what is happening is, one is this share shift issue. The other problem in the cargo business is wide bodies, which used to have a lot of belly capacity for cargo, have come down because of the pandemic. Narrow bodies are doing well. So since we are a narrow body operator, there's a cargo shift from wide bodies to narrow bodies, because wide bodies cannot justify as many flights. And we are finding that also an attractive market. So cargo has been one of our success stories. We think it's a structural shift. Again, there's a 90% of Indian traffic which needs to be brought back to Indian carriers, at least 50% of it. So we see lots of opportunities in cargo, and we are moving ahead and positioning ourselves for that growth.
You've expanded during the downturn. You've added new efficient new engines which are more fuel efficient. The number could still move to 50% plus according to estimates which are available. Why are you expanding at a time when you're in a downturn? So the aim is to conserve cash and also to expand. I'm trying to understand the thought here.
So when we got into the crisis and we were shut down and we were all showing up for work and there were no planes flying, and we sat down and we said, look, as we come out of this crisis, let's just get better at everything we do. So it wasn't a focal point of, oh, let's just manage cash. No, we'll manage cash, of course. But let's just get better at every single thing we do. Every single thing we do means let's improve our network. Let's get into the right cities with the right capacity. It meant doing more charter operations. It meant doing more cargo operations. It meant improving our product quality immensely. We said whether it's on-time service or mishandled bag, let's just get better at all of it. So one of the things, of course, was let's improve our fleet. If our fleet is one of our biggest strengths, if you will, let's make sure when we come out of this crisis, we have a stronger fleet. Now, we have a mix of old classic CEOs and new neo engines, as they're called. And the neo engines are 15% more fuel efficient. Now, that's a pretty impressive number. It's 15% more fuel efficient. So we said, let's get rid of all our CEOs as fast as we can, and let's bring in the neos as fast as we can. So although we're taking delivery of a lot of airplanes, our total fleet count is not going up. It's roughly the same. So we're getting rid of about 100 fuel inefficient airplanes and bringing in 100 fuel efficient airplanes over a period of 2 years. And that has a dramatic impact on the strength of our fleet and our costs, because 15% lower fuel consumption is good both for our costs, plus we have a strong ESG policy, reducing the carbon footprint. And IndiGo is producing some very impressive numbers in that regard as well, of reducing our carbon footprint. So this combination of factors is what you see on the airplanes. Yes, we're not flying as much, but there's a lot of turnover in our fleet cloud.
So can I use the thumb rule for the airline industry, which is 30 to 35% of the total cost for an airline is fuel, and if you save 15%, that would be the benefit on your operating line?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Our fuel consumption per hour, per block hour of flying, is one of the things that really stands out for IndiGo. Over the last few years, fuel costs have really gone down sharply. Again, it has a cost impact and it has a carbon emission impact. So we are happy with both of those.
At 50% plus market share, what would be the near-term aim? Gain more market share, or market share gains are decent, now focus on growth but high profitability?
So two things we don't focus on. One is, what is the share price? And the other is, what is the market share? Those will be what they will be. They are a fallout of everything else. We focus on what do we need to do. Have a stronger product, have a stronger fleet, make sure the employees are committed, engaged, and enthusiastic, make sure our service levels are high. That's what we focus on. And after that, the fallout is Well, we might have a higher stock price, we might have a higher market share, but those are not in any way our aims or objectives. Those are a byproduct of our actions.
So it's profit first, it's not market share. Can I say that?
It's profit. It's never market share. I mean, there are many things before market share. Oh God, I mean, we never pay attention to market share. Let's say that. So, what is immediate goals? Get your product better, get your service better, get your fleet stronger. Make sure every touch point, customer touch point is better. We're focusing on all the quality aspects of our airline. We're focusing on the network aspects of our airline. We're very excited of what we can do with our network, by the way. I mean, you know, I in some ways, I feel like a horse that is tied up in the stable and it's just dying to get out and be free to roam, if you will. Because all around us, there's so many international opportunities. And we have the right fleet for it. As you know, we're getting the extended range XLRs. We've got the fuel efficient newer airplanes. So the places we haven't been to, you know, like Africa. Why aren't we flying to Africa? Why aren't we flying to China more? What about all the CIS countries? There's so much growth opportunities all around us. And again, as I said before, 65% of international traffic carried by foreign airlines. Why should it be that way? And during this crisis, these charter operations really opened eyes even more. Why are there so many charters to Kazakhstan, for God's sake? Oh, there's lots of traffic. Oh, how's it going there now? It's going through Dubai, it's going through Doha. Well, we can carry that nonstop. Same thing for Manila. So there's so much opportunities all around us. I'm just so impatient for these international sort of boundaries to open up in a way and for us to be able to fly quickly. And we are ready for it. We're ready for it with the fleet, with the training, all of that.
My understanding, Mr. Dutta, has been that you've decided to fly in differentiated routes, which is short distance international travel, whether it's Dubai or Thailand. Will that strategy change? I mean, because of pandemic, would you be thinking at long distance international travel, something which you avoided consciously?
Look, it's the long distance wide bodies that are most at risk. And let me give you an example. So, you know, there are like 22 different ways to get from India to the US. You can go over Oman, you can go over Dubai, you can go over Frankfurt, you can go over Amsterdam. It goes on and on and on. Well, those one-stops are the ones that are most at risk because now people are increasingly favoring non-stops. So you just look at the US to India market. All of a sudden, United flies 3 flights a day to Newark, to Chicago, to San Francisco. American flies Seattle to Bangalore. Can you imagine Seattle to Bangalore non-stop? Because before, the one-stops would have killed them. Well, now they can fly non-stop. So it's the one-stop markets that are most at risk. And therefore, we are focusing on the non-stops. Now, we have a 7-hour range out of Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata. And that's a huge market for us. Beijing, Shanghai, Moscow, Tel Aviv, Cairo, Kenya, Manila. We can do all of that from our different cities in a narrow body, single aisle airplane. So that's such a large market. We're like, hey, we don't even think about New York. Everyone wants to go to New York first. No, you go to New York last. That's not the first place to go to.
Well, it was such a pleasure to have you on ET Now. Stay safe. Thank you for joining us. I have a lot of regard for the way how IndiGo has handled this crisis. For a sector where a year ago nothing was going right, you managed to really keep the ship afloat in a difficult time, in a challenging environment, and by keeping your employees safe. So my sincere compliments for that. I know it's been tough for all of us, but the fact is that you've managed to take the brand higher, market share higher, and keep the balance sheet afloat. It is quite commendable. Stay safe, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nikunj. Thank you very much.